Okay, so welcome back. Now, in this example, we're going to take the situation that we're given a trig function. We're given the value of a trig function, right? And we want to find the other 5 trig functions given that trig function. And the fact that we are given also what quadrant the angle is in. So in this case, we're given that the sine of theta is equal to 3/4, and theta is in the first quadrant. Okay, so now, listen. One mistake that students make is when they're finding the trig functions, or they're evaluating trig functions, they tend to drop the theta. Okay, so realize that this is a function of theta. Okay, so remember, this is a function of theta, right? So we're used to, when we're dealing with equations, we have what? Functions of x, right? So we write it as f of x, right? So, but this is a function of theta. So we can't drop the theta from our answer. So we can't write sine equals 3/4. That would be incorrect. That would make no sense. Okay? So don't drop the theta. It's important. That's the variable, right? You're taking the sine of the variable theta, and that function gives you 3/4. Okay, so now, enough said about that. So now in this case here, we have the sine of an angle. We know that the sine of the angle is 3/4. We know that the theta is in the first quadrant. So that means we're in quadrant 1. Okay? So here we know that the triangle does something like this. Right? So we've got our point. Wherever that point is, we don't know, and it doesn't matter. What matters is the ratio. We know that the ratio of this sine of theta, again, theta's here, right? Okay, so the sine of that angle is 3/4. So the ratio is 3/4. So remember, what's sine? Sine of an angle is opposite over hypotenuse. So what we know is this, right? Sine, let me write it this way. So we know sine of theta equals what? Opposite over hypotenuse. What's opposite? This is y. This is x. This is r. So it's what? Y over r. Well, we know that that ratio is 3/4. 3/4. Okay, so now we need to find x, right? Once we know all 3 sides of the triangle, then we're done. We can get the rest of the trig functions easily, right? So let's do that. Let's use the Pythagorean theorem, set it up, and solve for x. So we know that r squared equals x squared plus y squared. Well, what's r? R is 4, right? And what's y? Y is 3. Okay, so now let's solve for x. Well, this means x squared equals what? 4 squared minus 3 squared, right? So remember, I've got to isolate the variable. And so now, if I take the square root of both sides, I get what? X equals, now, since this is in the first quadrant, we know x has to be positive. So we're just going to take the positive square root. And so this is going to end up being the square root of 4 cubed minus 3, excuse me, not 4 cubed, 4 squared. 4 squared minus 3 squared, which is going to equal the square root of what? Well, 16 minus 9 is what? 16 minus 9 is 7, right? And so we get the square root of 7. Right? And so now, oh, hold on. I knew something didn't look right. Oh, you know what? We'll just keep with it. Okay, so this is square root of 7. I miswrote one of the numbers, but it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't change the problem. Okay, so we've got this. Now the square root of 7. Now, what happens with this? Now we've got x. X is equal to the square root of 7. All right, so now we've got x equals the square root of 7, y equals 3, and r equals 4. So now we can fill in all the other ones. So we've got sine, right? So now all we need is cosine theta, tangent theta, cosecant theta, secant theta, and cotangent theta. Okay, now, what's cosine theta? Cosine theta is adjacent over hypotenuse, so that's going to be square root of 7 over 4. Tangent is opposite over adjacent, so that's going to be 3 over the square root of 7. Now let me just check something here. Oops. Okay, good. We'll leave it that way. Okay, so we'll leave it like this. So square root is 3 over the square root of 7. And now cosecant is 1 over sine, right? So it's the reciprocal of sine. So that means it's going to be 4/3. And then secant is 1 over cosine. So that's going to be the reciprocal of cosine. So it's going to be 4 over the square root of 7. And then finally, cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. And so it's going to be the reciprocal of this. So it's going to be square root of 7 over 3. Okay, now these are the exact answers. And again, make sure you understand that if you're asked to give approximate answers out to, let's say, 4 decimal places, then you would just stick these in your calculator and just round all of these to 4 decimal places as necessary or as indicated. Okay? But that's it. That's how you use one sine function or one trig function to find the rest. Okay? Have a great day.